through the process. So if we take a look here at just a little bit more about the history, we have the birthplace of printmaking. And it's going to go through and show us a few examples, and it's going to show us some items that we possibly didn't really think about, or items that we've seen before that we never knew. So this first example is an example of a woodcut. And then we have another woodcut here. So what the artist would do is they would actually carve into a piece of wood, and they would create their drawing right on the wood. They'd carve through it, and then they'd ink the wood. The wood would then only have ink on the areas that were not carved away. So it would show, a lot of times they would do the negative space. The next few are etchings, and that's a little bit different, where you take a metal plate and you actually etch or draw into the metal plate, making scratches on it. And then you put that into an acid bath, and that will eat away at some of the areas that you carved. So etching, you can get a lot more smaller details in, and you can have a lot more things going on because it's a little bit easier to write into. And then a lithograph is another example of printmaking, and the screen was created from a woodcut and a lithograph. So lithographs helped, you could add a lot more different colors to your prints. If you're adding multiple colors, you have to have multiple blocks that you would be printing, and then each block would have a specific color on it. So just kind of going through and showing a lot of different types of printmaking. Engraving, again, very similar to etching. Engraving creates the burrs. You can see, you've probably seen a piece of jewelry that has been engraved. And then you have screen printing, which was kind of a large example of things happening. And screen prints were created on t-shirts a lot of time, or other different items. And we've been talking about the history, so some technical information about prints. If we look, we've got our wood cuts, and you can cut it out of wood. We have our lino cut, which is out of linoleum. Lithograph. We've got our silk screen or seriograph, which is like screen printing. Etching. Dry point. Mezzo tint. Soft varnish. Intaglio. Solar plate. Liquid metal. Some of these I'm not familiar with. Aqua tint. And monotype. So this is a great website here to take a look at for some of the different options of printmaking. And then we have our last one that I want to show you, which is a process of etching. So I'm going to start it towards the front. And I don't really have a studio to do printmaking in, so it's super hard to do some examples. So a great place to see a lot of examples is on YouTube. So the first one they're going over is etching, and it's kind of just showing you all of the different details, line work. Basically, etching is all created out of a different type of line. The very, very dark areas are where it was in the acid bath longer. So that's a tool that you would use to carve into your that tool would be where you carve into your plate. So you start by creating your design and drawing it onto your plate. And then you would go through and carve out all of the areas in your design. So here are some of the different tools that you can use to create your design. And you just scratch it out, and you can see all of the different scratches in the area here. If you want your line a lot thicker to be darker, you would go in and carve it thicker. If you want it thinner, you'd go in and carve it thinner. The one thing about it is you cannot take it away once you have it there. So next, they're preparing the plate. That material that he put on makes the lines in your plate darker. It kind of eats it away a little bit to make them heavier. Now this is ink on his plate that he put on, and he's wiping away some specific areas to keep them light. This is just one specific person doing it this way. So he's going to set his plate on the press. He's going to set another piece of paper on top. And then he rolled it through the press. So a lot of times in printmaking, you'll have an area where it's an inking area. You'll have a dry area where people are creating the drawing part. And then you'll have the printing area. So that, because the inking area can get very messy, the huge thing about printmaking is you don't want to have marks around the edges. You want it to be nice and clean. So you have to make sure your hands are super clean when you go to the print part so that you don't get fingerprints or different parts on your print itself. And then they'll just pull it off, and there's the print. So if the artist is doing a series of this image, this would be one of one, or one of 27. And then they would continue going back, inking, reprinting, and creating the artwork and the print. So then once they get to 27 to 27, they would be done with their series. So that's some examples of etching.